this is difficult, of course. You have to know a lot about lots of different factories in order to be able to know what's the best available technique. So therefore in the EU there are reference documents on BAT, and quite lengthy documents, about 600 pages for each type of industry. And in order to make it a bit simpler for the regulators, there's also something called BAT conclusions. It's basically a summary of the reference documents saying what functional standards should you be able to achieve if you apply or use BAT. And there's something called emission levels associated with BAT also, which are specific for each kind of industry. The industrial emissions is a minimum directive, as most environmental directives are under EU law, which means that it allows for more stringent emission limit values should that be required for environmental reasons. But on the other side, there's a possible for derogations as well. And derogations are permissible if the application of the emission limit values in the BAT conclusions are causing disproportionate costs due to the geographical location or local environmental conditions or the technical characteristics of the installation concerned. And this is quite important also, that this possibility exists because it gives a possibility to keep installations where it might not be possible, just simply because there is not room to implement new technique. So you may have to use something else, the next best technique, because the plant is just simply too small. We saw several examples of that when we were traveling in Ukraine, that went into the power stations there, and they explained to us that in order for them to put in a system of NOx and SOx reduction in their plants, they would have to reconstruct the entire plant. They would have to basically tear down the building and build a new one, because it's not big enough. So they would have to opt for some other solution if they would keep the plant. There's always the option of closing the plant as well, of course. The Industrial Emissions Directive is a bit different from the old IPPC directive. It allows for a little bit less discretion than the IPPC directive, and the reason for this is that the IPPC directive tended not to work so well in some countries. So the Commission decided to provide a bit more stringent guidance on how to apply this legislation. The consequences of this we're not sure about yet, but clearly discretion will be a less important feature in the future. But anyway, this is an attempt to demonstrate how an assessment is normally done in this field. I submit a permit application, and I have emissions at this level. This is tons of emission, you can say, and this is time. This is no impact on the environment down here. This is what you would achieve if you would implement BAT, the best available technique, in your operations. This is what the operations achieve now at maximum production of permitted operations. When I apply for a permit, I want to increase production. If I do nothing and increase production, emissions will be up here because I have no abatement technique. So what the permitting authority will say then is, well, in order to give you a permit to go up there, you will have to do something. First of all, you will have to look into what it takes for you to go down to this level, because this is where you want to be. This is where you should be. The operator would say, yeah, well, that will cost me X million euros to do, and if you order me to do this, I will have to close the plant. However, I can do this for Y million euros, which will secure the environmental interests and also secure the interests of the future of my operation. And on a cost-benefit analysis, the permitting authority will then come to the conclusion that this is acceptable. Still, because emissions are lower than they were before, production is higher, and we're going closer to the VAT level. And most importantly, we are way below the environmental quality standard level, which may never be exceeded, because this is the outer limits for the protection of the environment as such. So this is sort of a theoretical way to describe how permitting is done in practice. And this is just for one single question. The same is done for all questions or all issues that are related to this plan. This is a lot of details, and we shouldn't go into all of that. But what I want to show with this picture or this slide is that the Industrial Emissions Directive and the system of integrated permitting is not a question of filling out a form or checking boxes or anything like that, because in medium-specific permitting, it's quite often so that you have a certain type of form that you're supposed to fill out. And if you've filled out the form correctly and the numbers are good enough, you will get your permit. In integrated permitting, you have to tell a story more than just provide the numbers. You have to provide the numbers as well, but you have to tell the story in order to get the permitting authority to understand the operations and understand the priorities that you give to different impact of these operations. And in order to be able to tell this story, you have to provide quite detailed information about your installation and your activities. What are you actually doing? You have to give information about what raw materials you're using and how much energy you're consuming. What sources of emissions are there? And you have to provide information to the authorities about the status of the soil environment, which is a baseline report. And of course, you have to give information about the conditions of the site in general. I mean, the environmental conditions of the site, and the emissions and their significant effects. And you have to, in order to be able to give a basis for the assessment of whether or not VAT is being used, you have to provide information about what prevention and abatement techniques there are to reduce impact. And on the other side, you will see that the contents of the permit will reflect the information that is given by the operator in various respects. For instance, the emissions and the prevention abatement technique description will result in emission limit values in the end, etc., etc. And this puts a lot of strain, I would say, on the permitting authority, because in many countries where you have medium-specific permitting, there's one person sitting there doing the permitting. And this person is generally quite good at the types of emissions that he or she is handling, and also the plants that he or she works with. However, this is something else, because this would require this person to know everything about the plant. And not only this, he would also have to know everything about the surroundings of the plant and how the plant affects the environment. And as we will go into further, there's lots of legal considerations that come into